was born in St. Charles Parish, Louisiana. I spent my early childhood there as well as most of the rest of my life. I was born in 1941, and my father was James Vial, who was an attorney, and my mother was Irma Semino Vial, who was a school teacher. I had a wonderful childhood at Hornville High School, which really wasn't Hornville High School because it began in first grade and went all the way through the 12th, which is what I did. But the teachers at our school were like family members, and they treated us like family members, which most of the time was a lot of fun, and of course it was good for our education, but we didn't get by with very much. When I was a young child, I kind of followed my father around and went to court with him several times. And I think that I always thought of myself as being a lawyer. And honestly, I don't believe I ever considered any other profession. Oh no, I did. I considered being a concert pianist. That didn't work out. I left Hornville and went to Loyola in New Orleans, primarily, I suppose, because my parents didn't think I should go away to school. They wanted me close by so they could keep an eye on me. So I went to Loyola and had a great time there. I quickly made my way into law school. I skipped a few steps because I didn't get an undergraduate degree. I had the minimum number of hours and went into law school. I think I must have had a premonition that Harry was going to be there and I could latch on to him. I started law school when I was 19, and Harry and I got married right after my 20th birthday. And I stayed in school and actually took the bar exam before I graduated. Again, I don't guess I did it exactly the traditional way, but I was expecting our third child on the day that our bar exam was scheduled. Harry and I used to both go to Mass at Holy Name at noon, which was a student's Mass. And we didn't know each other, but we saw each other back and forth walking from church to the cafeteria. And so one day he said hello to some people who were on Father Toomey's staff, and they called me Mary Ann, and he asked if I were Mary Ann Vial. And so they said yes, and so he sought me out because he had gone to college with one of my cousins. And when we later met and talked, and he told me that he had gone to school with my cousin, my first words to him were, "My God, you're old." So he was about 11 years my senior. And in fact, when he graduated from Southwestern with his undergraduate degree, I was in 5th grade. So as soon as I graduated from law school, I went to work in the firm where Harry and my father worked together. And it was a good transition for me because I could do part-time work while I raised those children, and did pretty much of a general country practice. I did some oil and gas work, and I did some real estate development, and was very happy that I was able to keep my my practice going with the help of my family. During the time that he was running for election, I basically put everything else on hold and just spent all of my time working with him because it was such an important step in our lives together. And we were very lucky, and we liked campaigning. It was a good experience for us, although I remember one day going into the district attorney's office in Terrebonne Parish, I believe it was, and there was a sign in the window that said, "Have you hugged your child today?" And I actually broke down into tears because I had not. I had managed to get help to take care of my children while we did our political thing. roughly 2 years after Harry became a justice on the Supreme Court of Louisiana, I decided there was a vacancy in St. Charles Parish and St. John parishes, the 29th Judicial District Court, and I decided that I would like to try my hand at being a district judge. I felt that my temperament was much more suited to the people interaction that goes with being a trial judge than the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court, where there's so much more studying and brief writing and not very much interaction with people. So I ran for it and I won. I think the best part of my job as a district court judge on the state level was my interaction with people. I did a lot of work with the school board and working with behavior disordered children. And in fact, we formed I was asked to work with the school board people to form what we called a court school, where behavior disordered children who were on probation were separated from the regular classroom and were placed in their own environment where they had lots of supervision by the courts. In fact, in my office in Hahnville, I could see the court school from the back of my desk. And if there were problems in the classroom, the deputies who were involved with the children would see to it that the children had an immediate hearing in court so that we could address whatever problem it was. It was a win-win situation because immediately the regular classrooms were relieved of some troublemakers, and these children who were having problems had very special attention to help them through the crisis that they were going through. Other things, I always like to involve the classrooms in my courtroom, and had several opportunities to bring them in for moot court. And at one point, the Scholastic came down and we filmed a moot court with people that I pulled from the district attorney's office and from the sheriff's office and from the middle school, which was adjacent to our courthouse, and did a great moot court, taught some constitutional law to those younger children, and they published a book as well as a video. And I thought it was fun being a part of that book because Nelson Mandela and Eleanor Roosevelt were two of the people who were also featured besides me. So it was a fun project. In 1996, I was appointed by President Bill Clinton to the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Louisiana, and I've been there for 20 years now. The confirmation process was very interesting because the questions that you're asked by the people who are going to vote for you are very different than the questions that you're answering on a regular basis when you're a state district judge in rural Louisiana. So I studied for days and days constitutional law on tapes and any other materials I could get my hands on so that I would be able to answer the questions that were asked at my confirmation hearing. And luckily, there was an immigration hearing going on, and the senators, during the course of the hearing, were called out, and we were given the opportunity to answer their questions in writing. It was like having an open book exam, so it was pretty awesome that the questions that I had feared so much were taken away from me. At the time of my confirmation, John Breaux, who was the senator from Louisiana, who more or less sponsored my nomination, spoke, and as did J. Bennett Johnston, who made a speech and said things about me that I didn't know he knew. Billy Tozan, who was our congressman from our district, the 3rd district, came to bat for me and really made a big difference, because there was somewhat of a deadlock in Congress, just as there is today, because it was President Clinton's last part of his first term, and they weren't confirming very many people at that time. In fact, I was confirmed in July, and I was the first one in 1996. We had the opportunity to meet Justice White, who was the one who swore me in as a federal judge. That was kind of an interesting story as well. We decided to go to ask him if he would swear me in, and he was stationed at that time living in Denver. And so we flew with our family to Denver and had dreadful airplane problems. So we were like 4 hours late, didn't have the opportunity to go to the 10th Circuit where his office was, where we had planned to have the swearing in. So I was sworn in under the trees in my sister's backyard in Denver. About 20 years ago, one of our friends, Professor Beyer from LSU Law School, wrote a play that involved the only Chief Justice of the United States who is from Louisiana, and that is Edward Douglas White. And Harry played the role of Edward Douglas White in Paul's play called Father Chief Justice. And I was Fannie Holmes, and the wife of Oliver Wendell Holmes. And Oliver Wendell Holmes was played by our former law professor, Bill Redmond. And one of my treasures is my standing talking to him in his role with his wonderful white whiskers as Oliver Wendell Holmes in the play. We performed the play in Thibodeau and in Baton Rouge and in New Orleans at the Louisiana Supreme Court, and it had so much fun with that performance. When I was on the state trial court, I had to plan with a psychiatrist one day for a sanity hearing for one of the defendants in my court. And I reached for my calendar, and Dr. Ritter said, "Oh, I can't handle that hearing on that day. I have a gig." And I said, "What do you mean you have a gig?" And he says, "Oh yeah, I'm with a band. It's called Memory Lane." And I said, "Well, I want to play. I'm a frustrated musician." And he said, "Well, come and join us." And I did. And so actually I played the oboe in high school for 5 years. And for marching, I would play the clarinet or the C melody sax. So I still had a little bit of knowledge of how to play the clarinet. So I went and played with Memory Lane for about 5 years. And it was a wonderful experience. And we used to laugh that our group played at homes for the deaf, but it really, some of the people were very good musicians. In 2015, I was accompanying my husband to a medical procedure, and I called into my office to tell my secretary that I was going to take him home because he needed to rest after the procedure. And she said, "But you can't. You're being honored at the Fifth Circuit conference this morning. The conference is being dedicated to you." So I quickly made my way downtown so I could receive that prestigious recognition. In January of 2011, I decided to take advantage of a wonderful opportunity that United States district judges have, and I became a senior judge. Being a senior judge means that you can opt for a reduced caseload although you do get to keep your chambers and you keep staff. And so I, since that time, have had a reduced docket. Harry has retired from the Louisiana Supreme Court and is now doing appellate consulting. So it's nice for us to have some free time to spend. We thought we would do fishing, but apparently we just aren't going to do that. Hasn't worked that way.